My name is Dr. Mark Roberts. I have a PhD in animal nutrition, which I gained from Massey University in New Zealand. My research focused, and does still focus, on what it is that dogs want to eat, which I found out to be a high-fat, protein-based diet with a minimum inclusion of carbohydrates. I was, as I am now, involved in working dogs, sled dogs, and I was feeding a standard kibble, a dry diet, high in carbohydrate inclusion. But with a strong background in nutrition, I started to question this. This was in combination with my father, who had worked with sled dogs in Antarctica in the 60s. And these animals were fed a high-fat diet, basically from seal meat, supplemented with a vitamin and mineral premix. And they did extremely well on this high-fat diet, so that made me question, why am I feeding dogs now a high-carbohydrate, low-fat diet? So I dug deeper, I looked into the research and realised that it would be advantageous to feed dogs a high-fat diet, one that was low in carbohydrate with a solid protein component. So I switched over and put my working dogs onto a diet of that composition, and I saw them improve in a number of different areas. When you allow them to choose what it is they want to eat, there's health benefits associated with that. So these can be increased lifespan, decreased risk of diseases, increased rates of reproduction. You could feed them a lot less food and they would go a lot longer on it. For dogs, as a carnivorous species, the environment they live in, a wilder environment a dog will live in, the prey items are typically pretty high in protein. So for them, and for dogs living in this feast or famine environment, they will want to consume a really high level of fat initially, just because it's so calorie dense. You know, and all they're thinking of is surviving. They're not thinking beyond in either point of view. And my research found that they consumed an incredibly high fat, and this dropped off over 10 to 14 days, still being a high level, a much higher level than what you'll find in most commercial dry diets.
Bones & Co is a pet food company. I really see understanding the importance of the macronutrient profile of a dog's food.
They're productizing perfectly with my research findings and my working dog research that I'm undertaking at the moment as well. This dog's smiling. She smiles. Oh, they all smile. She's smiling. For healthy dogs, the first one would be a sustained energy release. So if a dog's on a high carbohydrate diet, the carbohydrates deplete pretty quickly. So carbohydrates in the dog are stored in two main locations, the muscles and the liver. And once those deplete, then the dog will become fatigued. Another one would be insulin and glucose. So we all know that if dogs are fed a high carbohydrate diet, the glucose is going to increase. With a high fat diet, you don't see that, it plateaus. Indeed, my own research has found that before and after consuming a meal that's high in fat with protein, it doesn't change at all. In fact, sometimes it goes down. And probably the third one for a healthy dog is it reduces the risk of the dog becoming overweight and obese. And that's simply because it satiates the animal. It helps it feel fuller quicker than if it wasn't a high carbohydrate diet. So from a therapeutic perspective, tying with my previous point about the insulin and the glucose, is that over time that will reduce the risk of an animal developing diabetes in the first place. Another good therapeutic benefit of this diet is that it's neuroprotective. Dogs that have neurological disorders such as epilepsy, by being fed a high-fat, protein-based low-carb diet, reduces the seizure rates in these animals. Another one is cancer. So we know, this has been well established, that cancer cells are fed by glucose. So glucose feeds cancer cells. This is just putting it in a very simplistic way. So if we can reduce the amount of glucose that's being fed to these cancer cells, i.e. by switching them to a high-fat protein diet which reduces that glucose, then we can increase the risk of, increase the potential of starving these cancer cells, so either reducing the rate of cancer progression or even stopping it in extreme examples. The main thing I strive to do, and my research has shown, is that feeding a high-fat diet to your dog is not detrimental to the health. We really need to change this belief that a high-fat diet is going to result in the animal becoming diseased and dying early and all these other things. We need to understand that science has developed from there. We can see the benefits from feeding this diet both to humans and to dogs. And I think if I can change that mindset, then I'll be pretty happy as a nutritional scientist in terms of educating people on what they should and shouldn't be feeding their pet.